Start recording here, and wow, very exciting. And then mute me. Okay. All right. We're back. We're doing it.
It is happening.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge that we had some technical difficulties. I'm going to the magic of showing you my light. I'm bringing this back. I have a light here. I look like a fucking moron. I look like a camp counselor that's telling ghost stories. I think those were the devil talking to his subjects. I think that was all the shitty punchlines that I'm trying to recapture. Now let's get back to, we were talking about how you do this podcast. You're doing this podcast from your daughter's room.
Yeah. I do all my Zoom comedy shows here as well. And the reason is it's the farthest from the rest of the house.
I see.
So this is the most private I can get, but it's interesting because I don't know if you've experienced this doing stand-up on Zoom, but any sexual material sounds so intimate and filthy.
Well, I have not had to do this in my daughter's room.
Nor should you.
Yeah, I am. My room is a neutral room in which none of my family members or my wife and I have had sex. So it's a room that is. It is the only filth introduced to it is from Zoom. So.
But yeah, what I'm doing these. I mean, my sex jokes are PG-13. You know what I mean? There's nothing crazy, but it's just like, it's something about the intimacy of looking at all the faces.
Yeah.
And they're just staring at you. And then I'm like in my daughter's room. One of the shows I kind of made the mistake of mentioning it was my daughter's room, and that really ruined the vibe. That was really.
On the Zoom shows, the chat is a real distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't think that I like the chat, and especially because it's like it pops up. If you just never knew it was happening, it wouldn't be a big deal, right?
Yeah.
If it's just the audience, I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of a distraction for the audience also. But when the comic can see it, it's the worst.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I've watched. I don't know if I pay attention when I'm doing it, but I've watched. I did one for Tacoma Comedy Club and the other clubs they own, and the chat was, someone said a political joke, and then the chat turned into like, I hope this guy knows there's some Trump voters listening. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't need this shit,
Yeah, it's so weird when it's like, I had a show where this guy was doing like maybe loosely race material, black comic, doing like kind of race material, but not really. Like, I think he mentioned white women in the joke. And a guy was drunk and just goes, like, walks to the stage and goes, why don't you say something nice about white people? And it's like, okay, you have a bone to pick with the world.
Yeah, for
Not
sure.
this you're like looking for the in to get your stupid point across. And
there was a big comment thread on one of the when I did one of those virtual shows for the comedy clubs. They own 3 clubs, and this guy was like, he seemed insane, but he was just like, he was talking about double standards, and then everyone's only allowed to make fun of white people. You've met these guys.
Yeah.
And then, the club's like, hey, check out the show. I think you'll enjoy it anyway. And then, like, I looked later, this long comment thread of, like, talking about how, he doesn't have white privilege and, blah, blah, blah. And then at the very end, I did like Gabriel Rutledge. And I'm like, that's my fan base right there.
That's Ron Hirschberg, a mutual friend of ours, has a great joke about. I think in the joke he's lying, but he's talking about opening for Pauly Shore. He's not. It wasn't actually Pauly Shore. I know the truth behind the joke, and it wasn't Pauly Shore, but it was somebody heckled Pauly Shore and got kicked out, and then he's like. He's a piece of shit, blah, 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 blah. And then he points to Ron and he goes, he was funny. And he's like, oh, actually, I kind of like this guy. He's not too bad.
This guy gets it.
Yeah. Maybe I'll try to, instead of butchering that joke, I could link to it at some point. But,
nah.
But so the privacy of the thing that I think you're maybe covering up is a wild, sexual kink you have in your bedroom. in your the bedroom of your wife. Not technically, this is your bedroom also, right? You own this house, so
Yeah, sure. Me and the bank, we came to an agreement.
But yeah, what's the you got cameras set up, swing ties, and all that business?
I wish it was a forbidden zone. They're like, stay out of there. Don't touch that. No, there's nothing. There's nothing at all going on in there except some cats sleeping, and I mean, there's more kids in there usually than adults anyway. But
hey, I don't know if you want to say that in this day and age.
I should really choose my words more carefully. I would like to.
Gabriel Epstein. I think that so you know the last time we talked publicly, you and I talk on a semi-regular basis, but the last time we talked publicly feels like 11 years ago.
Oh my God. We were kids.
I know. We were going, in a month or so when this thing. I don't think we said that, but I think that was like our thought.
Yeah.
Is like this will be a month or two, and then everything will kind of start to get back to normal. You were in the middle of your last road weekend for a while. You ended up doing another one since then, but you had the world was crumbling. We still had the comic Crystalia to admire. It almost feels like Kobe Bryant was still alive, but I know that's not true.
I don't know, but that was not too far before.
Yeah, the world has changed so much since we last
mightily.
Yeah,
for sure.
What do you think about what do you think the future of stand-up looks like now?
I mean, look, day to day, I'm doing fine. Long term, looks bad. Does not look good. This is what I thought when you and I talked on that other podcast. Was like, it was like in my head, it was going to be, okay, this is going to be a thing we do for a while, and then some adults will tell us it's safe to go back now.
Yeah.
And I never considered that it would be, it's not really any safer than it used to be, and it might be less safe than it used to be, but you can go back. And I'm like, wait, should I? That has not gone away. I did a one road week, and on stage was fine. On stage felt great, but like everything else was just, I was mentally exhausted when I got home from just the constant paranoia of like, did I touch that? I should use hand sanitizer. People after shows are wanting to shake hands. I'm like, hey, nothing personal, but I'm not going to do that. And, it was just exhausting. A 2-day trip was like exhausting. And I'm like, it depends what article I click that day. But sometimes I'm like, yes, this is my job. It's what I'm supposed to do. And then other times I'm like, I'm an absolute lunatic. What am I even doing?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because I live right next to where there's like a bunch of bars, right? And it's not, I wouldn't say it's like full steam ahead like it was before the virus, but I do think it is like, I'm like a little bit alarmed at how quickly people just went back to business as usual. And my wife and I went to a bar for the first time yesterday at 4:00 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday. It's a little difficult to keep track of the days. So not a crowded bar, and it's like a craft beer bar and not a part of town where people live. So it's like particularly low attendance. And it felt like it had to feel the way that like going to a speakeasy during Prohibition felt, where it's like, ugh, I don't know if people are judging us for this. They have to be.
Yeah, for sure. And then, but I also, all other times, I'll be like, I have to live my life. I have to, I get in the car with a risk of getting in an accident, and I'm fine with that, but so again, it's like I swing wildly each way, but it's like, if you got sick, no matter what you were doing would not seem worth it.
Yeah, that's
true.
True.
You know what I mean? It's like, if when I went to Wisconsin, if I would have, if I got COVID after it, I would have been like, oh, that stupid $1,000 gig was worth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's also, if I just drop out of comedy which don't get me wrong, comedy's kind of dropped me. I mean, it's not, it's sort of back, but it's certainly not, like it was. But it's like, do I need to stay involved? Do I need to keep doing these shows so when it does come back, I'm still a part of it? Because that's one thing is for sure is comedy forgets people real quick.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if it's like, I'm scheduled to go to Looney Bin in Little Rock, Arkansas, I think in August. So if I decide that's not safe for me, and then I cancel on that guy, and then a year from now, where I start sending out all my we got a vaccine emails, and that guy's going to be like, well, you bailed on me when I needed you.
I know.
So it's this weird balance of trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do, and I have not done it. I have not balanced it in my brain,
Yeah, I mean, I've taken I took journalism and broadcasting classes in college, and one of the unfair things about journalism and broadcasting is the expectation is basically that for a year you're going to work on an internship, generally an unpaid internship, and I just could never afford to do that. Like I was living on my own, completely supporting myself, all that stuff, and it's just like I can't spend every morning at a radio station for 5 hours and then do full-time school and then have a full-time job. And even even be able to be an entertaining person, if I got the on the very slight chance I would get on the air on that stupid radio station. With comedy, I've taken the approach that I'm gonna do all the shit that nobody wants to do.
Yeah.
So whatever. I've done the door. I've done seating people. I've done a bunch of audio stuff for our local comedy club. I've done a bunch of shit that isn't in the job description of being a comedian. And this is one of those moments where I'm like, is the thing be the guy that'll go out when there's a tornado outside.
Yeah.
And save the, save the farm. Is that the thing that could vault me to the next level of comedy? And if it's not, how fucking stupid would it be to be out again, out doing it?
Well, look, no one knows what, either we get used to living with risk or there's some sort of resolution to the health crisis, but we don't even know what's going to be left when that happens.
Yeah.
As far as not to be overly pessimistic, but to get back to where I was before I'll just say I'm way too open with money, but in the before times, I was making $100,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not net. Yeah.
Yeah.
To get back to that point, I don't see that happening for 2-3 years.
Right.
I mean, the amount of the clubs are going to close. There's going to be more people trying to get in the clubs. The corporate gigs are going to be less, or either pay less, or not. People won't be doing them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the little bars and restaurants I work here in the Northwest, I hope they're still there in a couple months. Mm-hmm. So it's this weird thing because I'm also I have to keep my spot in comedy, and then I'm also well, maybe, what am I trying to, it might be part-time after it's all over anyway, so I don't even know. I'm not exactly sure what to do about that, but so far I am doing some stuff. I have a few shows I'm doing. I'm not flying again until August, but it's funny because all I wanted to do was comedy when it shut down, and if they said all of a sudden now nationally hey, no one's supposed to fly anymore, I would be oh, thank Jesus.
Yeah, did you have the moment, because you and I talked while you were in Wisconsin for your first gig, I guess your first in-person gig, right? After I had this so I emceed a weekend, and which, by the way, I hate emceeing. It sucks. It's it's so much more stressful than featuring, and even so much less gratifying. The crowd is cold. You do less time. Yeah. It's substantially worse, and it felt so goddamn good that I was literally texting my buddy that owns a brewery, and I was like, hey man, I want to start a show as soon as possible.
Right.
I want to get every comic brings their own mic. I don't care how many people you can fit in the brewery. If there's 10 people, I guarantee you comics will do it. And I do believe that's true.
Yeah.
But as the high has worn off, I'm like, man, that's pretty risky. Even every comic brings their own mic. Even everybody's 6 feet apart. It's like I don't know if I want to be the reason why there's like an outbreak in Pierce County. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And also, like, by the way, this has become on other comic message boards like a moral argument with people. So it's not even like nobody will care. Also, people will be mad at me for doing that.
It's interesting because even though it's a moral argument in my own head, I do feel like comedy, maybe some other things too, but comedy's getting a little bit of an unfair shake right now because like D.L. Hughley apparently has COVID-19 and he passed out on stage. And by the way, I watched the video afterwards and he was like warning everyone that he was asymptomatic. I'm like, no, you weren't. You passed out. That's do you know what I mean? Like that's got to be a symptom, right? Like
yeah, I think exhaustion or lethargy or whatever. Of course it's a symptom.
And then, you know, you go on Twitter and it's just like, let me get this straight. You're in a room full of people performing comedy during a pandemic. Like, what the fuck are you thinking? And I'm like, okay, I understand that, but it's like, what he's thinking is, this is how. Well, he makes money other ways too, but like that's his job. The club is thinking we've been closed down for 3 months and we're about to go bankrupt.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's. I know comedy is not essential, but either are bars, either are restaurants, either are movie theaters, and so it is this weird thing where it's like, oh, what are you going back to your job for? You know what I mean? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It was a dumb job before coronavirus. It's a dumb job now. Like, you know, so it is this weird thing where and also I think it's actually harder on famous people right now because it's like when I went to Wisconsin, I brought very few people in who were Gabriel Rutledge fans. It was just like, we want to go out, we got a babysitter. But if you're D.L. Hughley, you're like, I'm the reason this whole room is filled with people.
Right.
You know, or if you're putting on the show, you're like, I'm the reason this is happening. It's a different, but it is, I don't know. There's no good answers and there's no, you know, time will tell, but I don't know. I don't know what the, I've also risked my life many times for comedy, and that sounds very like
heroic.
Yeah, and it's not heroic, but I mean, you know, I've driven through blizzards in the Canadian Rockies in a Kia Rio, which was much more dangerous than flying to Wisconsin during the coronavirus. And so it is this weird thing where it's like, it's never made sense to do comedy. It's never been a good idea. And so my default is like, it's not a good idea now, but I should keep doing it, right? You know? Like
yeah. Do you have any mysterious slight illness that you've had that you've been able to go like, oh, maybe I do have the antibodies in the last, like, from February on?
I am definitely one of those people that thinks I had it.
Yeah.
I think in January, I think I might have had it. It doesn't all line up. You know, I didn't have a lot of the things, but I just got sick in a way that I hadn't been sick before. Like, wow, what is happening exactly? But it could have not been also, you know what I mean? But I definitely had that thought, and it was in January, and I got, I'm recreating my calendar, like, you know, House and CSI combined. And so I'm like, okay, I got sick in Vegas. What was I doing the week before? Kirkland.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Kirkland, Washington, the gig was literally 2.4 miles from the nursing home where it kind of started in our state.
Wow.
So I'm like, you know, it doesn't mean anything, but I'm like, some shit does line up, you know?
Yeah. I was in Indianapolis in late January, and I worked with this comic, Ismo, who's like, I think from Finland, maybe? Poland?
I bet they're doing a better job. He's probably back in Finland.
I think he lives in LA now, but he was like very sick. Like couldn't, like, basically he would get up for the show and he would take like a bunch of flu medicine, wasn't working, which is like a hallmark of this whole thing.
Yeah.
He would, and so then immediately after working with him, I got like a little bit sick. But then I came home and my mom got sick, like pneumonia sick. My mother-in-law got sick. My wife got sick. And I'm like, oh, wow, maybe I... And I also, like, another thing that happened that's maybe just serendipitous is I had been gone for 5 days on the road for a day job and comedy. And so I didn't do a lot of comedy right after that. So hopefully what happened is I got it and didn't infect every single comedian that I came in contact with. But I do think, like, comedians have to be just particularly heavily exposed to it because there's so many things about comedy that like are ripe for spreading a virus.
Especially the way we're doing it now is definitely safer. But before, I shook hundreds of hands a week. Right. Hundreds. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hugs. Maybe hugs are actually better than handshaking. But it's like, well, look, when I think I might have had it when I was in Vegas, it was Super Bowl. So I guess probably the very beginning of February, the Super Bowl. And it was like, what you kind of do when you're sick on the road or maybe at whatever job you have is you just pretend you're not sick. You don't want to bum people out. You don't want people to not talk to you. So you're just like, no, I'm good. Got a little, I'm all right. Don't even.
Yeah.
I was sharing nachos. I went to a Super Bowl party at the MGM, which was amazing, but I was just dying the whole time, not enjoying it, So it's like all these things that, like, if I got sick now, I would be around no one. And the last time I was sick, I couldn't have been more social. I'm like, I will have some of your nachos. Yeah, I will. Like,
I was so social, it was exhausting me.
Yes, yes. And that's going to be weird to that part of it of it's almost, a lot of people take pride in working when they're sick. I have. Do you know what I mean? I've been awful and been like, I fucking did it anyway. And that's going to be like, what if I do fly to Little Rock and I am sick, I have to tell the club I can't perform tonight. They're fucked.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's this weird chain of bad things that are going to happen, but I think that will change. I bet that will change beyond even after pandemic. Even if it's the flu, I think people are going to be a little more like, I'm sick, I should stay away from people.
Yeah, I think that, like, the culture of not using your sick time at work is gone, has to be gone.
Yeah.
The culture of, like, companies not offering sick time is gone. I also think that we are going to become, as much as there's like a bunch of don't tread on me folks that maybe don't believe this or they think it's some infringement on their personal liberties. I think we're going to become a mask wearing culture, like when you're sick, not all the time.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so like, I look like such an idiot because on that trip, it's a work trip. I did comedy on the work trip. So that was very nice of my company, by the way, to let me do that. But, this woman that I work with is, she's Filipino, her husband's Chinese, and I believe that's true, by the way. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry if you listen to this. I think that's right. But, like, I think that specifically Chinese culture, there's a lot, like, when you're sick, you wear a mask. That's, like, a very simple thing. We don't do that in America. And she was wearing a mask on the plane to and from, even though she wasn't sick. Just like, that's what I do when I fly. And I was like, what do you think? Like, what do you think you're doing? What do you think you're solving by this? And as it turns out, everything. She was doing everything as perfectly as she could. Not touching anything, hand sanitizing. This is in January.
It's I think Japan has less than 1,000 deaths total. Like, it's that weird. I was actually just talking about this with my wife on our podcast, the Rutledges. But I think that idea of even what other people like about America and what we think is special about us is it's like, America, we're independent. And even like you'll see a car ad for like the most basic bitch car in the world, like a Honda Accord or something, and it'll be like, there's something a little different about you. You're gonna need this special, beige car.
It's a
You know
car
what I
that
mean?
11,000 people in your city also
Yeah,
own.
exactly. This special car that there'll be 4 of in every Costco parking lot. So it's like this thing where we're just, you know what I mean? It's like we play by our own rules, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, health crisis. We all got to come together for the good, and we're like, what do you mean? As a team? Fuck that. I play by my own rules. So it's like we're not even set up psychologically to handle a pandemic. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's and it's like it's also the thing that it's done that's crazy to me is it's flipped a lot of people's like people who are liberals in the like and also believe in like personal freedom and everyone should have like an equal shot are also like the same people who are going I have a friend that's like we should have reacted more like China, and I'm like, in China they stopped letting you leave Wuhan. If you
Yeah.
got sick, they welded your door shut and didn't let you leave.
Yeah.
There's somewhere in between what
Yes.
we did and making someone's home a prison that is like
Yeah.
a reasonable. I mean, it's like people's entire their hypocrisy is so crazy on this on both, right? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
it's like they're like, oh, there's less than a 1% chance I'm gonna die. I made a great point the other day, and I need to say it out loud. I made it on social media, but it's this guy's like, there's less than a 1% chance you're gonna die of this. I'm not wearing a mask, and I'm like, there's less than a 1% chance. Oh, and he's like, they can't make a law, and I'm like, there's less than a 1% chance if you drive drunk that you're gonna die or that you're gonna kill someone else. But it's still a law that you can't do it. They can still arrest you for it. And imagine if you weren't drunk, you didn't know you were drunk for 5 to 14 days. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yes, wear your
yeah.
goddamn mask. It's not a big deal. I hate it too. It's hot. I fucking feel claustrophobic. My glasses fog up, all that shit. It sucks. Wear your goddamn mask.
I'm old enough to remember before seatbelt laws.
Oh, yeah.
And
Did you
that
see
was
Stanhope's tweet on that?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God! I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No, fine.
there's a baseball player named Aubrey Huff who's become like this crazy right wing guy.
I'm
Played in
familiar
San
with him,
Francisco. Yeah, and he posted a thing about how I'm not wearing a mask. This you can't regulate me. And Stanhope just tweeted, "Did you do this from your car with your seatbelt on?" Because he did. He had like a seatbelt on in his truck.
And I get, you could. I understand the argument of personal freedom or whatever as far as a seatbelt, because actually a seatbelt more than a mask, because the seatbelt is just you in theory.
Yeah.
But it's like there is definitely a precedent for giving up personal freedoms for safety. And look, I have a line too. I don't know where it is, but it's interesting that people feel like this is the first time this has come up. And
Right.
there's not a million, but there's tons of little things we're supposed to do. I mean, why is not littering not a personal freedom?
Right.
Do you know?
I get a little weird about the like tracking and tracing stuff. That's like my
Yeah.
personal thing. I think it's like, I mean, I'm not, again, it's like, I think they have our data anyway. We already know like Edward Snowden blew the lid off of the idea that we have a ton of privacy in this country anyway. But I think like, how actionable is that data? Like, can they,
Yeah.
whatever, like, I don't know what a smarter person would have a better version of this, but it makes me feel a little weird. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, there's things about it that make me feel weird too, but it's also, at this point when you look at numbers and stuff, you're like, why are we doing worse than everyone but maybe Brazil? Do you know what I mean? It's not good. I have a question for you.
All right.
Which is like, I'm kind of struggling with personal identity right now, because I've been constantly touring for 15 plus years, and like, so that part is like, it's actually been sort of nice to be home, and
Yeah.
I say on stage, and by stage I mean this room sometimes. I say I used to miss my kids when I traveled, and now I miss missing my kids.
You have a great joke, which, by the way, we got to talk about your album. I love this joke where you say, is it on this album where you go, when I'm on the road, I miss my kids, I miss my family, not the first day,
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
that's
That's
such
on
a
there.
fucking funny joke.
I said that on the radio once, and I'm like, oh, I got to keep that.
That's fucking so funny.
But it's like I find myself, and you were at a different level than me, and you already had a day job and everything. But
Mhm.
like as far as like, I've had this vague, undefined motivation for most of my adult life, which was get better at comedy. It's
Mhm.
very not specific. It's very, open ended. I don't, you know what I mean? But it's like the overall thing was get better at comedy. And like, I don't have that right now. Like, I'm not thinking about stand up comedy that often. I'm not doing it enough to be writing a ton.
Right.
And it's just weird to like, it's almost like, I mean, have you felt that at all? Have you felt like, you know what I mean? This is the new version of me.
I have the thing where it's like, and this is gonna sound like not great, but I'm like, I can't have a life where I just work to like I work to be able to do stand-up comedy and stuff like that, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that stand-up comedy has to be it. It hasn't always been it. I would like it to be it. I really enjoy stand-up comedy, but it can't just be I work, I come home to my family, and that's it for me. So that there's something missing.
Yeah.
But I also like I feel good when I hear someone like you say that you're like not writing a ton, because I feel guilty that it's like I've always been like, if I had more time I would write more.
Yeah.
Now I have a ton of time, but it's like your life is you're kind of like in constant fear of like dread
Yes.
of doom. A little bit at least, right? Like for a while I would like wake up, pull up the data, go to bed. I'd look at the data before I went to bed. I would be, working out like these statistical models on my computer and looking at like, changes and different stats over the course of the days. And then I realized after I hadn't done that in about 3 weeks, I didn't even realize that I hadn't been doing it. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm fucking depressed. And that's the cause, is all of this like existential dread. And I'm
Yeah.
absolutely, I'm not writing. If I thought the first Zoom show I did, I was like, this is good enough that I could write for it. I think you might have even said that to me. Like you could,
Yeah.
you could actually develop some material on there.
You can try a joke and see if people like
Right.
it.
And it's like, it's like no worse than doing it at a bad open mic. And how much
Right.
material have you or I developed at a bad open mic? A lot, right?
A ton, yeah.
But I had reached a point in comedy where the vast majority of my shows were not bad open mics. And I don't think that I guess I'm not that kind of an addict where I can go back to that. Like I don't feel any need to go back to that as like the primary thing yet, right? We also talked last time about how everybody's going down the totem pole at least one rung, and I think that's been true, right? Like we've seen like Bill Burr is doing comedy clubs at partial capacity. DL Hughley is at the same club you were performing at a couple months ago.
Yeah, for sure. And that part actually surprised me. I thought, oh, none of these big names are going to do it because they won't have enough money to pay them, but I think they just don't care. They're like, I got to do something.
Well, I think they're all kind of the one thing that I do feel, and why I think the Zoom shows were helpful, is I think the Thursday show was a little bumpy for me the weekend that I did, but like Friday I felt like almost back. And I think that after having done the Zoom shows and realizing how much I had forgotten my material, I probably did 8 Zoom shows, and I went through almost all of my material, probably almost all of my material twice. There's one joke I know I didn't do twice. By the way, a joke that's probably a little touchy right now. If in this other, by the way, we haven't even mentioned that, but there's like a race war going on that wasn't around when we last talked. And I have a joke that's like racial but not racist, and
Right.
I think that joke's probably on the shelf for a while, which sucks because it's like 9 minutes long.
Oh, man.
But I don't think. I mean, maybe it'll come back. Maybe it'll be fine. But yeah, that's the one thing I will say is like just the dread, like the stress of trying to remember my material has been enough on like not trying to. I've written like a couple new jokes that are just like, anytime I have like a quarantine related joke, I just like, let's just get that shit on the internet. I don't need to ever do that.
Yeah,
again.
exactly. And I have written a few things, but it was definitely by accident.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is how most of my jokes are written. But meaning I didn't sit down and try to think of them. It just something came up or whatever. But it's I also think maybe it's because things are reopening, or maybe it's just fatigue. But I think Zoom comedy's done. Like people don't want to do it anymore. Like it's of course it's very hard to promote to the same group of people over and over again to watch you perform mostly the same jokes over and over again. But it's like in the beginning the numbers were really big as far as people watching the Zoom shows. In the last few I've done, I did one with these are not certainly household names, but they're definitely Northwest comedy names. I did one with Kermit Apio and Dwight Slade and Don Friesen, who's not Northwest. But it's like I was the least experienced comic on there at almost 20 years. I mean, we had 23 people.
Oh,
do you know what I mean? It's like, I think people are just like, yeah, I did that, but
I love it I think about this too with like in comedy, there's so many producers, people that produce shows that you're like, there's no way this is gratifying for you in a way. You're not getting out of this what I'm getting out of this. And I don't know why you're doing it. Because I almost don't want to do it. The thing you're like doing, and you're doing the shitty part of it, right? Like you're not getting the joy of performing that I'm getting from it. And I kind of feel that way with Zoom audience members, where I'm like, thank you for being there. But I don't know why you're there. Like, I don't know why you don't just turn on Netflix and watch a comedy special or watch clips or whatever.
Yeah.
But thank you for doing it. Anybody out there that's
absolutely
sat through a Zoom show, because that's the only thing that makes them palatable at all, is having 6 people laughing is like, oh God, this is like, it's a little methadone to the heroin, but
oh, for sure. That is an excellent comparison, actually. It's Zoom comedy is methadone comedy. But I was doing all these, I guess April, trying to figure out how time works again. I think it was April. I did a bunch. I got in with this weird corporation I won't name that I did 5 or 6, maybe 7 Zoom comedy shows, which was great money-wise. But it was one of them, this is my lowest point probably of the whole quarantine, whatever we're calling this, is one of them, it was about 15 people, and all of them were muted.
Oh no.
And I'm just telling my jokes to smiles. Yeah. And one guy was driving, one guy was shopping, he's buying eggs, and I'm like, I miss my kids, not the first day. It's just, it was so, is humiliating the right word? It felt humiliating. Just it was it wasn't, there was no closeness, there was no intimacy between audience and performer. It was just recite some jokes for 40 minutes and we will give you $400, which, don't get me wrong, I'd do that today if that was the deal again. But it's just I'm just like, is this what comedy is now? It just felt so bad.
I did one where a guy was just walking around Seattle, not shopping, just walking the streets. I'm also in my mind, I'm like, he's got this, his phone's got to be just on fire in his pocket, because he's it's you're in his pocket, or it's you see just the sky. I don't even know if he's looking at it or not. And on the same one, it was a man and a woman, and they just walked out of the room. We're not. They just so you just got a blank couch for 30 minutes.
I did one where it was a husband and wife, and they were on their front porch. And for a second, I thought, because I always change it so I'm not the big face, because that drives me crazy. I want to see everyone.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm like, are they waving at me? Because they're and then I realized, oh, they're just waving at their neighbor who's walking by.
Well, the other thing that's funny is because I've been on the semi-production side of a couple of these Zoom shows on accident is a lot of times it's set up so that the audience can't see the other people, but then the comic will start addressing a specific person as though everybody has the same view as they do, and then it's not going well because the other people don't get what you're saying, like why what you're saying is funny, and it's really, I don't know how to be like, they can't fucking see you, dude. They can't fucking see you. You know, like.
Yeah, I know. But at the same time, it is better than nothing. But it's like, I don't know. Now we're in this. It's sort of like things are kind of opening up again. And so I don't know. I kind of felt like the last few I did were like, I think this might be kind of done as a popular option anymore.
Well, so you've had the misfortune of going from touring national headliner to doing Zoom comedy shows in your daughter's bedroom. But that was not the beginning of your 2019-2020 misfortune.
You know, it feels bad when you put it so succinctly like that.
When did you do the first attempt at recording your album?
I would say I think March 2018.
Oh my God.
March 2018 I recorded some stuff, and then
was this in Arizona?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that means it was earlier. I think like January 2018. And then I was like, maybe I'm not quite ready and I don't love the recording. And then I did a bunch of recordings in March that I thought would be the album. That didn't work out. So it ended up, I didn't record it till December 2019.
So like I kind of want to go down the full timeline if you're okay with
it.
If it doesn't give you PTSD.
No, it's fine.
So you do the Arizona one. I thought it was a pretty cool idea and ambitious project, which is like some video, call it a special, call it not a special, whatever. 2 clubs. What's the place called?
Laughs in Tucson.
Laughs in Tucson. I saw you sent me some of the video. It looked fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the audio recording didn't work out. And I I think we're both friends with the guy I'm still friends with him. I don't know if you are, but
yeah, absolutely. No,
so I don't want to trash him in any way. I just it didn't work out in
No, and I didn't pay him either. He was like, I want to try and do this. And I'm like, yeah, let's try and do it. You know, he was trying to learn it, but it just like some of the sound on one of them got weird, and then one of the cameras in a different one wasn't working. So it just didn't exactly work out. You know what and those, you know, it depends I think comics get a little bit, I get hung up on like the new album I have right now that's coming out very soon. Don't get me wrong. It's good. You should buy it. I listened to it and I'm like, yeah, that's me talking. That's people laughing. What else do you need in a comedy album? But it's one of those things where like, was that one of my top 10 shows of the year? No.
Right.
Do you know? But that's all our bullshit. I really do feel that way. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's so it was disappointing that some of that stuff didn't work out. But there was another time I tried to record in Victoria.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring that one up. I didn't forget that one. because I actually thought the audio that I heard from the Victoria, because and the other thing is I with the guy that we're talking about have attempted to like salvage I think all 3 of these recordings at different points.
Yeah.
And I thought that the Victoria one was like the crowd sounded fucking amazing. And I've never been to that room. I guess I've never been to the Tucson one either, but the crowd in Victoria sounded like right on top of you and low ceilings. And I know that you recorded it at Spokane Comedy Club, which is a beautiful club, and I love it. It might be my favorite club that I've worked, but it's in a warehouse. Like
it's big. You know, but really the recording. I mean, I'm sort of talking shit, but the recording it sounds like a theater is what it sounds like. It's thanks to you, I should say, because I had a bunch of different microphones and stuff, but you're the one who turned it into listenable. So I do appreciate that. And it is good. I mean, but it's just this long. I think the thing I'm kind of bummed about is I lost about 10 minutes
Oh, really?
of material because by the time it was, I'm going to try to record again in December, it was like, I can't do a lot of these jokes anymore that I thought were like for the album.
Yeah.
You know, of course, the good news is when I look back at most of my albums, if they're like, whatever, 50 to 60 minutes, I go, 23 of that was good. And the rest was bullshit. So maybe I got rid of 10 of bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's that? I know that this is like a classic male analogy, but I believe it is Coco Chanel said that like the way to look fashionable is when you're walking out the door, look in the mirror and take one thing off. And that's better than putting one extra thing on. I believe I got that via another classic male reference. Alex Guarnaschelli on the Food Network, I believe, was the
You've changed, man.
But yeah, I think like, you know what, that sucks. It sucks. I also like, I kind of feel I was trying to record a much less ambitious thing, but like I didn't get the sets that I wanted out of some kid material. And then the one show that I got, like the good recording that I wanted, the camera was fucked up and the audio was bad. So it's like, can't even be released as anything, right? Like
it's so hard to get that magic combination of,
Yeah.
And I wish I had more video, but it's also, I'm happy to have it to put out. I mean, just because.
Well, that's the other thing, right? It's like while you got unlucky in so many ways, at least you got it recorded before this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's 61 minutes of, maybe 7 or 8 laughs a minute. So it's like, I don't know what, of course, a few of those recordings had a little more energy. They had a little more, but, I listen to comedy I almost listen to the audience more than even when it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to the audience, and I don't think most people are as insane as comedians are. You know what I mean?
That's absolutely true. Comedians are so precious about that stuff. You and I have multiple occasions where you're like, can you mix the crowd a little hotter? Because like my preference is like, I'm a big audio. I guess we're gonna see. I'm not gonna use the word. I was gonna say the C word. I don't know if this is that kind of podcast. I'm a very picky person about audio. This is the first episode of the podcast that it will become.
I mean, save the C word for episode 5. I mean, that's for Patreon.
Yeah. I am like, almost want it to sound like a studio recording if possible, and that's just the audio side of me, because I've never had to mix my own album where I'm going like, I got to get these laughs a little hotter, like to make it sound like it did in the room, to feel like it did in the room, right? Because that's always the hardest thing, is like to make it feel like it feels in the room as an audience member. You almost have to bring the laughs up to a point that it like fucks up the line level mic. Because I really do believe, especially in that room can feel amazing. And if you played the recording, it sounds like very echoey and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. That's exactly what I try to do. Is I'm like, well, it didn't feel like this in the room. Make it sound like it felt, and that's a weird, that's a weird goal to have. But it's one of the reasons I wanted the Hecklers one to work is because it's kind of an inside baseball title, but that club, and it's called Hecklers in Victoria, BC, and I wanted to call the album "Comedian Destroys Hecklers."
Oh, that's funny.
Just for like, it's corny, but it's okay. Didn't happen, and I'm kind of glad it's coming out now, even though it probably would have come out 6 months ago. But it's called "Good Luck in Court." By the way, speaking of white privilege,
I was gonna. It's we had I thought so that I've never had more involvement in the creation of.
I'm so
album.
sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I've liked it. First off, I mean, you're a comedian that I admire. I'm happy to be involved with it. I've learned a lot, which sounds like a the backhanded insult. It sounds like that doesn't sound like that isn't. But I'm saying like I've learned a lot about the creation of an album and how difficult it is through the struggles that you've had. Also, I did like the mixing, but I just sent you with a bag of microphones to Spokane, and you set it all up. You and maybe Luke Severide, or maybe not Luke Severide, set it up yourselves. So like there's I mean tons of challenges, and then you go. It's called Good Luck in Court. You have graphics made for it, and then the world devolves into riots over this, like justifiably. I mean, you and I are on both sides of this, but it's like the injustice or the disparity in justice between black and white people, and your album cover is going to be you in a courtroom.
It's literally like people are literally like, give to this cause because the court system is so stilted against African Americans, and here's me on a cover.
Give me $10 for this empty courtroom that I'm probably presumed innocent in.
Wouldn't it be funny if I got arrested? Can you imagine? I mean, look how white I am.
Oh my God. It's just, I mean, it's like, I mean, I certainly think that anyone that hears the joke is going to understand that is nothing to do.
That's why I asked your advice on it, and you were like, well, you should use that joke in the promo. I'm like, good idea.
It's a little bit of giving the climax of the movie away in the trailer, but I think that that's just not the way that albums work. I've never listened to an album and have been like, when's he gonna, like a Gary Gulman, I'm like, when's he gonna do that Karate Kid bit? It's just like, oh, here's the great bits on this album.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine, and I will be doing more promo when it actually comes out. But no one said anything far as I haven't gotten any blowback, and even if I do, it's just I'm not known for my timing off stage. I kind of have a long history of like being too late, too early, saying yes when I should have said no, saying no when I should have said yes.
You were supposed to record a dry bar in March.
I was, yeah. I was supposed to record a dry bar in March, but don't bury the lead. I said no 2 times previous.
So you said maybe we should. You said no. Yeah. And then they were like kind of successful, and then you said no, and they were getting millions and millions and millions of views and becoming maybe the best promotional tool in comedy.
Yeah. The first time I said no, it was real early, and no one had seen any of them, but it was like, I know a couple of people who taped these dry bar things, and I was just like, okay, it's a company that's being sued by movie studios because they're editing Hollywood movies to make them family friendly. It's like a Mormon company. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, that's a strike 1.5 already. And then it was like family friendly. I'm like, like I can be clean, but I'm like, and then I was like, okay, when your goal is like finally comedy Mormons can enjoy, I'm like, no thanks. You know what I mean? I don't really want to do that. And then I saw people get popular from it, and I thought, well, even if I got popular from that, what if they came to see me and then I'm whatever, R-rated, PG-13 rated? They're going to be like, wow, what is this? And then people started telling me the money they made, and I'm like, I'm in. And then coronavirus came, and my dry bar taping never happened. It's supposedly going to happen sometime in the future, but we'll see. And I almost forgot about that. That was in March. I was like 2 weeks away from taping that.
Yeah, there was a show in Tacoma that I was loosely involved with that I booked you on, and that was maybe the last involvement that I had in it. And that got canceled. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. The other guy producing is moving to Texas.
Wait, what show was that?
It was at Essence.
Essence
Lounge.
Yeah, yep.
Which had to be on your calendar for like 3 days before the world shut down.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I do a theater show in Olympia. It was supposed to be like March 12th or something, and then it was going to be like last week, June 21st. Now it's January 30th. We'll see.
Wow.
It's but that's everything, and that's everybody. But it's It's weird because it's like you said, everyone's kind of back to like, if not, well, not back to square zero. Zero's not a square, but not back to the beginning. But it's like we're all kind of, no one's really making a ton of money performing comedy right now. And at first that made me feel better, but it's also like, it just makes me realize I didn't have, I don't have like, oh, I'll just lean on my podcast and make all my money from that. And you know what I mean? I didn't have the online presence before. And it's like, so it's, like I said, day to day, things are fine. Everyone's healthy. I thought this would be a financial challenge. So far, it hasn't been. It's just been a staying useful challenge.
Yeah.
But I still haven't got unemployment. It's
Oh, really?
It's pending. My wife has, and I deliver groceries. Some not full time, but enough to, we need the money, and I need to get out of the house. So. It's like I said, day to day, everything's fine. But it's like sometimes when you think about, things that I used to want, I guess I still do, but like, oh, I want a late night TV credit. That seems like you have to take a spaceship to a different planet to do a late night credit right now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just like all those goals like that are just like, when are we even going to start thinking about things like that again?
Yeah, I wonder, like, I think maybe we talked about this. We've definitely talked about something like this, I think, off of a podcast. But, like, those late night shows are all just in their living rooms now.
Yeah.
And I think what this whole thing has done, and how stand-up comedy falls into this, we'll find out, I suppose. But it's stripped away 100% of the bullshit, like, bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so like if Jimmy Fallon can do a show in his living room, why can't Casey McLain do a show in his living room? Like, if that's the new standard, then like I have all the shit to do that. You have all the shit to do that. Like, yeah, maybe you don't have a team of writers behind you, but you got one writer that's like probably better than Jimmy Fallon, if we're being honest. And then also, like, that's the comedy related. And then it's like, now you can drink alcohol on the streets. And it's like, well, how many, like, if you want to, like, get it, like, just pull everything back to comedy, it's like, if I can drink alcohol on the streets, do I really need to go into a club to do it? You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, I really hope it's like all just game theory, trying to figure out how people will react. You and I was like completely shocked at how, like, it wasn't a swarm to buy tickets for the weekend that I did. The crowds were like not sold out at 35% capacity.
Yeah. Either were mine in Appleton.
Right.
I think we had one show that was like the 35% sellout or whatever, but it's, some people are like, I don't care, I need to go out. Most people are still being pretty cautious.
I also like, I've thought about what a comedy album is going to sound like, and you might have one of the last comedy albums for a while that's recorded in front of a capacity crowd.
Yeah, I know.
What's the special going to look like? I mean, that Chappelle shit, I didn't watch it actually, but it's like out in a field, right?
It's out in a field, and there is an audience, but they're not mic'd. You can, first of all, it's not particularly funny, and that's not a criticism. It's not really supposed to be, but it's like they show people out it's outdoors with an unmiked crowd. You can barely hear them, but yeah, I mean, I put up Zoom clips too, and it's like, because it's like, I guess this is what we put up now, but it's also like, let's say we were in a comedy club. If we got that level of laughter in a comedy club, we'd be like, I don't want anyone to see this footage,
Yeah, it's funny. So you said a thing about Zoom earlier that I want to talk about, because you were talking about how you bring it up so that you see everybody on there, and I get very precious when somebody talks about the, like, if anyone's like, I remember I did a show once and I did like pretty well, and the producer of the show was like, you'll get him next time. And to this day, I don't know if he was being sarcastic or not, and I fucking hate him for it. I mean, I'd still work with him, but I just like
I think he was being sarcastic. That's kind of like if you really destroy, they'll be like, when you going up? You know what I mean? Like one of those. I think it sounds like that.
Yeah. But also, like, yeah, like your ego won't let you give it 100% of that. So I'm doing this. I recorded a Zoom show to send to another comic, not to be like, this is good. This is, please share this. Please book me. None of that. It was just like, this is what a Zoom show can be like if you're curious, because you can hear the audience, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, yeah, did you see that black lady not responding to you the whole show? Like, she didn't. And I'm like, so I'm in my. He says this like while I'm busy. I fucking ruined myself for 4 hours. Like, this lady. He's like, yeah, she just like never responded. She just had like a shitty smirk on her face the whole time. I pull up the video. It's a still shot of a woman. It's not even. So this guy's misunderstanding of technology ruined my day.
Yeah.
And so I think that's.
By the way, first time on stage, real stage. I don't know if you experienced this, but I was like, I could finally do this. Like, because Zoom, it's like what we're doing right now, right in front of each other. And like, I'm like, oh, I'm panning the audience like the old days. You know what I mean? And then when I first started doing Zoom, I would do that out of instinct. But there's no one there. It's my daughter's desk.
It looks like you're just like, what a mess this place is. Oh my God.
It's the sewing machine on my daughter's desk she hasn't used since the day after Christmas.
You also said a thing to me, and I gotta let you go pretty soon, but which isn't me kicking you off. You have a hard out, apparently.
I do. I have a hard
out. You said a thing to me that I thought about the whole time I was on stage, which is, while you're on stage during this, you think about every speck of spit that comes out of your mouth.
Oh, yes.
And I'm not like a crazy animated comic. I don't have like a pronounced lisp and I'm spraying spit everywhere. And still, I'm like, if I have this, the front row at every show now also has this.
We don't think about it in conversation. And also in conversation, we're not as loud and animated. But if the stage light hits you right, you can just see it launching from your mouth. And I have thought about that many times. In fact, in Appleton, I was like, you might want to move I don't know. I just felt it's just, yeah, exactly. It's exactly what we're supposed to be avoiding. And you're like, yeah, sit right there. You'll be fine.
Yeah, and I was like, I remember going like, well, I think probably when I start out, I'm going to, maybe work on the back of the stage a little more. And then now, first time out, I'm like, stepping towards the front of the stage.
It
looking
feels
over
bad
the front
back
row.
there.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Also, like there was a guy in the front row who he definitely wasn't giving it to me because he didn't open his mouth the whole goddamn set of mine. But
was it a still photo?
But I don't want to see that guy's full, closed-armed, disappointed dad look at me,
No, not at all. And yeah, I don't know. We're trying to figure it out, but I do have some shows coming up. And
when's your next show? When's your next in-person show?
Well, I have one. June 27th. I don't know. This might come out after that, but
where is that at?
Sultan, Washington.
Oh, okay.
It's like a small place where I'm sure they think masks are for homosexuals.
I bet you they don't say homosexuals.
I cleaned it up and I still regret saying it. I'm going to be honest. But and then I think in July I have some stuff in Oregon, like at casinos and stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we'll see. They're like, oh, by the way, the casinos are like, you can't sell merch. And I'm like, well, I get it, but like, ow.
Yeah.
That was a big part of this before.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I feel like, I mean, it's also one of those things where you go like, you want to be like, well, then you gotta make this worth it for me, and then you're like, oh, but also you're the only job available for months. So
there is no bargaining power right now. There's no hey, do you want to do the gig for this? Yes or no. There's none of that. Even when I did Appleton, I was scheduled to do it in September, and I did it in the very end of May for less money than I was scheduled to do it in September. But I'm like, I'll do it if I don't do it now, and if things are somewhat back to normal in September, I'm going to get bumped anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It'll be DL Hughley or somebody will come back in
Yeah.
after he recovers.
Now he has the antibodies, so he's good to go.
He'll be fine.